Okay. So, hi everyone. Welcome to our LinkedIn live session. And I am Shukti. I am the head for content marketing and brand planning at Brandu. And we have Avinash, our founder and CEO, with us. Okay.
Hi.
So, welcome everybody. And today we are going to look at something that startup businesses may find interesting, which is about branding. Okay. Before we move on to the next part of the presentation, first we'll quickly go through our vision, mission, and our values. So we enable brands and startups to resonate with their audiences affordably and efficiently. Our mission is to apply digital e-commerce branding and design capabilities so that our clients develop world-class skills and abilities and meet their consumers' needs more efficiently. Okay? What helps us achieve this is our value system. Okay, so we'll have a look at how it works. We always do the right thing because integrity is very important to us. Even if nobody is watching, we depend on each other because our aim is to back each other up and we develop ourselves and others, which means we are always learning so that we stay on top of things. We drive efforts like an entrepreneur, taking accountability for our actions, learning from our mistakes, and making sure that we don't repeat them. All of these help us deliver results as committed because the client comes first. So we have to bring our 100% to the table. Okay. Now, what we are going to look at today is that what strategic branding can do for you. Okay. This especially will be relevant for startups, but it actually applies to businesses at all stages. Okay. Now, moving on to the main part of it. Okay. Now, strategic branding. Okay. The market today is very saturated. It's extremely competitive, and you just have to open any social media to see how much is going on. Okay, you'll be bombarded by messages, and when we have so much to look at and so much to absorb, standing out, being heard, and being remembered is going to be very, very tough. Okay, now here is something which a lot of small businesses or entrepreneurs do. Okay, they think that once they have a logo and a name for their business, that's enough. Okay, and they don't have any long-term brand strategy. Okay? This may save you some money in the beginning, but in the long term, it never works out. Okay, and we are just not saying it. Okay, in 2020 a study by the London School of Economics found that the brands who have well defined brand strategies significantly outperformed their peers and outperformed the markets by 20% over a 5-year period. Okay, so once you start with a very strong foundation and you have a long term vision of what you want to do, where you want to take your brand, and how you want to play the game, you are already going to be ahead of your competitors. Okay, so let us first start by understanding what is strategic branding. Like we said, it's not just getting a logo or a name for your business. Okay, it is about building an identity. Okay, it's about creating that space for yourself in the market, which sets you apart from your competitors because then you can differentiate yourselves. Okay, it resonates with your audiences, which means that your brand not only registers with them but also you become memorable to them. Okay, only when people start remembering you for good will they keep coming back to you and your influence spread. Okay? And it gives you a unique personality that's memorable and relatable. See, brands are just like people. Okay, the kind of personalities they project, they will draw a certain type of audience in. Just like it happens with us, the kind of personality or attitude we put out attracts certain type of people. And the more human your brand comes across as, the better it is because it will become more relatable to your audiences. People stick to brands which they can relate. Okay, if you look at all the market leaders that we have today, okay, Disney, Apple, Nike, Starbucks, they all have very distinct kind of personalities which actually has helped them resonate with their audiences. Okay, and having a strategic branding, it gives you a clear direction to build your communication strategy. Remember that marketing or branding, anything is about creating perceptions. Once you know what kind of perception you want to create, okay, then you are on a solid footing. Otherwise, you are just going to fumble. We have seen even multinationals who fall into the same trap. They don't have a defined brand personality there, or a defined persona that they want to project, and it kind of puts them on the back foot while their competitors move ahead. Okay, so don't fall into that trap. Now, the real life aspects. It's fine when we think about something called strategic branding, but what does it mean? Okay, like we said, not your name or logo, but more than that, what inspires that name, what inspires that logo. Okay? It's at the very heart of your brand. Okay, strategic branding is all about bringing out that core. Okay. It starts with your brand story, the philosophical foundation of your brand. Why are you here? What is it that you want to accomplish? What are your values? And everything originates from there. Your mission statement, your vision for your brand, your vision for the world that you operate in, the kind of positioning that you want to take, how you want to differentiate yourselves from your competitors, where you want to stand in the market, the values that you stand for, the personality that you want to present, okay, and the tone of voice, how you're going to speak to your audiences and how you're going to come across to them. All of these are part of your core. Okay. Now, like I said, a lot of businesses think that it's fine, we don't really need anything, which is fine. But the thing is, brands who have these things figured out, they significantly outperform their peers. So think about it. This is not something which will give you immediate returns, in the sense, once you do a branding exercise and you have your core figured out, it's not that from next day onwards you suddenly start seeing your ROI take some gigantic leap. It doesn't happen like that. But over the years, what you'll feel is that your brand is becoming more recognizable, and it is more solid. Okay, what was not registering before is registering, people are remembering you, and over time it will just get stronger. Okay, now the
So
tangible
Shakti,
manifestation of
uh,
this. Yes.
Shakti, can you go back to the previous slide, Shakti?
Yes.
Yeah. So one of our member, Mark, has asked a question saying that can one brand have more than one personalities? Like to answer that?
Yeah, one brand cannot have more than one personality. See, it can be a
Yeah.
mix of different traits, but like people don't have multiple personalities, your brand cannot have multiple personalities either, because that will be very dissonant, and you will
Yeah.
just keep confusing your audiences, which is not at all done.
Yeah. So brand personality should, a brand personality it has to be unique because, like for example, if a person has multiple personalities, will you be able to relate with that person? It's going to be virtually impossible to relate with a person with multiple personalities. Right now he is friendly, next time he's something else, and some other time he's something else. It's going to be virtually impossible to deal with such a person. So brand should always have a unique personality, the personality with which your audience can relate to. That's the kind of personality you would like to build, and that's why it is very strategic in nature, because the kind of brand you will build, it will draw that kind of audience only. So it has to be very well thought through. Okay. And another person called Brindma is asking a question saying, possible to tell us the difference between personality and archetype? Would I have to take that, Shukti?
Can you repeat that? Your voice
Uh,
kind of scrambled
possible
in
to
between.
possible to tell us the difference between personality and archetype?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, archetype is actually a broader concept which we will take up in detail in some later session. But to give you a very short idea of it, okay, the idea of archetype is that every person carries within themselves certain personality traits or characteristics. Okay, and among all of that, one will be a defining kind of trait. Okay, in during the nascent stages of psychology. Okay, Carl Jung, the legendary psychiatrist, he formulated this idea of the archetypes, which said that every person exhibits the traits of one dominant personality. They may carry different types of archetypes within them, but one particular archetype always stands strong. Okay, there are 12 archetypes. Okay, now of course the field of psychology and psychiatry, they have progressed far beyond that, but it has remained very relevant to the idea of branding. Okay, what we try to do is that for every brand we try to choose an archetype. Now archetype forms the basis of your personality, but it is not the end all be all of it. Okay, see, if that would be the case, then every brand which embraces a certain archetype would become like the clone of another. It doesn't happen. Okay. Let's say somebody can come across as very authoritative. Okay. On the other hand, another person can be very authoritative but may not talk in a very formal kind of tone. Okay, so that's a difference there. Okay, again, if you look at like brands of humor, okay, the brand of humor that we humans have, same thing applies to brands as well. Okay, humor can come in form of wit, which is where you are actually clever. Okay, humor can also be sarcastic, which means where you kind of are abrasive and you can put a person down. A brand can also be the same. Some brands like Old Spice, they are very witty and humorous. Okay. On the other hand, if you look at brands like Wendy's is more sarcastic. Okay, so archetype definitely can give you a direction, but yes, there still are spaces within that to create different personalities based on the same archetype. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think Shukti, that does answer the question. Let's move forward.
Sure. So we are moving on to the next part. So, like we were discussing, the core of your brand. Now that you have the philosophical core of your brand figured out, how will you manifest it? Okay, it's like giving a concrete shape to your brand. Of course, your main identity markers will be decided by that philosophy. Okay, your name, the logo, the tagline, if you have color schemes, symbols, and other design elements, your packaging, your space design, anything. Okay, all of that will be influenced by your philosophy. I'll give you an example. Okay, all of us we know the Beatles, right? Famous rock and roll brand.
Yeah,
Okay, so the Beatles, they came at a time where they become a youth sensation. Okay, they were the kind of people that every woman kind of wanted to hang out with. Okay, it was like boyfriends. Okay, now imagine if the Beatles, with that kind of a very pop kind of personality, they dressed up like dark metal kind of heavy metal kind of brands. Okay, full on black face paint and skull regalia and everything, that will not make sense. And let's say they started calling themselves Black Death. Okay, but then they are singing about things like strawberry fields forever. That will be dissonant. So once you have your philosophy figured out, from your name to the logo that you adapt, the tagline that you want to go with, everything has to be in sync. Okay, because if there is a dissonance somewhere, it will ultimately create problems when you try to communicate with your audiences. Even if it is not immediately apparent, going forward, it will definitely hamper your communication. And like we said, messaging is everything. Creating perceptions, it is a calculated task. So make sure that everything is streamlined so that you can create the right impression. Okay.
yeah. Just one thing I want to add here, Shukti, is that most of the time people think branding is all about getting a name, logo, or tagline or color scheme. Please understand it. This is basically the part which you actually see. The core of the brand. The core of the brand is the brand story. Okay, is the brand personality. That is what people are not able to gauge. And the brands which are built on which such kind of superficial markers like logo or tagline or color schemes, they tend to lose track because there is no strategic direction set, and they keep wandering from one place to other place and never reaches the heart of the consumer. So it's very important to define much even before you put a name to your creation. It is important to understand and define why you are there. What is your brand story? If your brand story is not settled, if your brand story is not clear, if brand story is not compelling enough, it will not work. So it is very important. So it is very important that your brand story is strategic in nature. It is something which actually helps your audience understand that why you are in that business, why are you there, how is that you are going to add value to people's life. This is something which is very very important. So don't just focus on getting a logo or a name or a tagline or a color scheme fixed. Worry about your brand story. Why are you there? So for every startup founder, it is important that you understand what is your brand story. Okay, so it's very very important. And Shukti, Arjun is asking a question saying that can brand story and positioning statement overlap?
See, brand story is the origin point of everything. So, a positioning statement is more like a technical marker. Okay, it helps you define where you stand with respect to your competitors. Now, if you want to say that they are interchangeable, they are not. Brand story is more like a philosophical case. It will hint at how you are different from your competitors, but a positioning statement kind of encapsulates that. Okay, so
Yeah,
that will be the difference. There is no overlap in that sense. The story is your origination for everything.
yeah. Let's
Okay.
continue, Shukti.
And I would just like to add to what Avinash was saying here. Also, remember your brand's essence is timeless. Okay. It is timeless and more long time. Even if it is not for infinity, it will be there for at least 5 to 10 years. Okay. On the other hand, things like logo, tagline, name, all of these can change. Okay? But the brand never loses its essence because once its
Yeah,
essence is compromised, inevitably that brand will collapse. Okay, so that is the difference. Okay,
yeah.
go
So that's
beyond
why,
logo, tagline, and name.
yeah, exactly. That's why I wanted to say, Shukti, go beyond logo, taglines, and color schemes and fonts and things like that. This is that might change. The logo might change. The name might not change because if you create a new brand, you might not change the name, but the logo might change, the tagline might change, the color schemes might change as the brand starts to become more relevant for the current generation. But the brand story, the brand essence is timeless, and that is something which you should have a great control on, or you should understand why your brand actually exists. So it's very very important. And brands are never built overnight. It takes time to build brands. It takes a lot of love and care to build a brand, and that love and care can be demonstrated by the by the people who are behind the brand. So the entire organization should understand what's the value of that brand, why does the brand exist, what are the mission, vision, and things like that of the brand. Because once your people start to live those principles, the brand is built. Because brands is built at every touch point, and those touch points are created by people. So it's very very important. Shukti, continue.
Yes, yes. So Avinash really summarized it well. Now moving ahead, okay, uh, how do we want to manifest this? Okay, now there is a process to this. We have to start by studying the main three tenets of branding, which is number one, the company, which is your own brand. Now, of course, if you are a new brand which is coming into existence, that's okay, but you still have to have an idea of what you want to create here. Okay. The idea here is that when we study our brand, we want to understand what our intention is. Okay. What do I want to stand for? What do I want to offer the audience? What is the kind of personality I want to project? Okay. That we then compare to how it is coming across to the consumer. As you know, the consumer is going to be the center of everything in branding and marketing. So we have to look at whatever we are trying to project, is that impressing on the consumer or not? Secondly, is there a gap between what we are trying to communicate and what they are perceiving? Okay, so we study the brand's intent when we look at the company, and we also try to understand what the consumer is getting when they interact with your brand. Okay, so one is the consumer's perceptions, another is the brand's intent. These two are very, very vital. Now comes the third part, which is the competition. Okay, you have to stand out. You cannot be somebody's copycat. If that happens, people will forget you. Okay, very good example of that is in the sports brands. Okay, if you look at the market there, okay, Nike is a brand which has created such a strong presence there, which the kind of strong timeless messaging which other brands can only dream of. Okay, and now that it has defined its position, the other brands, they all seem to be fumbling. Okay, Nike says just do it, be the best version of yourself. Adidas comes and say that impossible is nothing. Okay, now that is a bit different, but you can still feel Nike's shadow there. Okay, so try to find something which sets you apart. If you stand in the shadow of somebody else, or you feel too similar to somebody else, your audience will always go with the original of the species. This is something which a
Yeah.
lot of startups don't understand. What they try to do is they kind of pick a company that they like, and they just want to be like that, which is okay if you have a grand vision in life, but if you want to stand out and be your own, then you have to cut a very distinct kind of figure there. Okay, so don't ape anything, stand out from the competition, study your consumer, understand your own company, that is what you want to stand for, and accordingly you strategize to create your brand's philosophy and the visual or the other kind of tangible identity markers. Okay, also there is another thing. When we look at the competition, we look at their strengths and their weaknesses. The idea of studying the competition not only relates to how you are going to be different from them, but also to avoid clashes in areas where they are strong. Know this, every brand will have a strength and a weakness. If you challenge a brand in a field where it is supreme, there is a chance that you are going to regret it. So try to avoid those clashes, learn from their mistakes, look at their best practices, and try to adapt them. Okay. Accordingly, after you study all these three, put your heads together and try to figure out now what you can be. Okay. Now we are going to look at the three tenets here in detail. Okay. The company, the message, and the personality you want to project, which means what is it that you stand for. Like Avinash said, your messaging should be all about what value you are going to create for your audiences and what are you helping them do. Okay, and the personality, of course, how you are going to be relatable to them. Okay, now look at how you're coming across to the audiences here. What do you want to project? Okay, and identify these gaps between your intent and what the audience uh, is perceiving. Okay, accordingly, create a strategy which can bridge the same. I'll give you an example. Let's say you are going to appeal to women. Okay, and the kind of brand color you choose is navy blue. Now, I am not saying that colors are inherently masculine or feminine. But the thing is, if you want to appeal to women and the kind of personality you want to project there, okay, choosing a color like navy blue kind of kind of undercuts your message. So keep in mind that if you are going to create your identity, make sure that everything is in sync to present a cohesive personality to your audiences. Okay. Moving on to the next part, the consumer, the most important factor in this game. Everything, a brand does not exist outside the consumer. It is dependent on the consumer in terms of revenue and in terms of the perception it is trying to create. Okay. And what mistake a lot of businesses do is that they just stick to demographics and think that that is going to help them. See, demographics are important, but you have to go beyond that. You have to understand what is happening in the minds of the consumers. Okay, you have to mind map them. You have to understand what are their pain points, their desires, their ambitions, the things that they are not happy about, the values that they hold dear, and the favored modes of interaction. You have to be where the audience is. Okay, so when you understand what your audience is expecting and what are the things that they want to hear from you, then you start creating a brand which is going to be very effective. And make no mistake, no brand is going to appeal to just one type of customers. Every brand will appeal to multiple type of personas, so create detailed personas for them. Okay, and tailor your communication accordingly. The kind of communication you aim at people who are your die-hard fans and people who are new to your brand, okay, are going to be very different. And it is beyond demographics or purchase cycle. Okay, it's beyond funnel in that sense. So try to understand your audiences, look at what they are thinking, try to understand what is happening in their minds, and then you will get to that point where you can create an identity which appeals to them and kind of make it foolproof. Okay. Now comes the competition. Okay, the very first thing we try to do here is identifying the right competition. Okay, understand this. A lot of times startups, when we ask them, like for example, a few days ago we were working with an IT company and we asked them that who is your competition, and they named Accenture and Infosys and IBM. Now the thing is, technically you guys may be doing the same thing, but they cannot be your competition. Accenture or IBM, they are just too big to be anybody's competitors. Okay, so identify the right ones, the people who are in your periphery. Okay, remember this, identifying the competition and benchmarking a brand are completely different. Benchmarking is all about aspiration. If I start a business, let's say a coffee shop today, I may aspire to be Starbucks. Okay. But if I try to compete with Starbucks about the kind of messaging that they are giving out, the kind of content that they're putting on their website, it may not work for me. Okay. So understand the difference and understand that who can be your right competitors on your web link. Okay. Look at your competition's messaging, look at your positioning. Okay. What are they saying? You will probably not find anybody's positioning statement out in the open, but you have to study your competition to understand what is the philosophy that they are talking about. Okay, idea here is that we avoid the exact same thing to say, otherwise it will be forgettable and it will be confusing. Identity markers here, it's not just about being remembered or being different, but also avoiding legal trouble. If you look or sound like somebody else's, if your logo is too similar to somebody else, you may actually land in trouble and have to pay a lot of money to get out of it. Communication strategies, yes, where is your competition active, what are they doing, who are their audiences? This not only helps you get a better idea of creating your personas, but when you actually start marketing your brand, or when you start to do SEO, or when you start running ads, understanding their communication strategies will help you identify gaps in their communication strategy where you can leverage your strength. Okay, you can identify the keywords, for example, based on which they are not creating any ads, and you can run with them. So study the competition and take note of what they are doing. Okay, differentiate yourselves and learn from their best practices. Avoid their mistakes. If something has not worked out for them, study it carefully. Chances are it will not work out for you. On the other hand, if you study it and you can identify a problem which they ignored or something that went wrong for them, but you are confident that you will not have that problem, you can go ahead in that field. Okay. But the idea is study it. Be very thorough in your homework. Otherwise, it will not work out. Okay. Right. So, going to the next part. Yeah. So now comes the deployment stage. Once your brand identity markers are set, once you have figured out your core, okay, now you create your strategy. Okay. First of all, decide on your audience touch points. Like Avinash said, communication will happen at every touch point and your brand will be enforced at every touch point. Okay. Identify these channels where your audiences will interact with you. It can be a physical store where they go to shop. Okay, it can be the website where they come to visit you. It can be on Amazon where they are searching for something and they come across your product. It can be on TV, radio, newspaper, wherever. Okay, wherever they are, however they're interacting with you, decide on the channels that you want to go for and understand what goals you have for each channel. Accordingly, decide on your activities. Okay, this is very important. See, not every channel will give you the same results. Okay. For example, if you're going to run a TV ad, you may not be able to decide whether running the TV ad is directly related to getting your sales up or not. On the other hand, if you do an influencer campaign and you provide the influencer with a referral code, okay, and you see a lot of people redeeming that code when they come to shop on your website, then you know that that influencer campaign has been a success. So understand the goals for each channel, understand the utility of each channel, and use them smartly. Okay? And set clear goals according to the time period that you have. Quarterly goals, annual goals, anything beyond that. Think along those lines and understand what goals you set, accordingly strategize. Now, the next part is building your brand assets. First thing that you should do is have clear brand identity guidelines. Unfortunately, this is something in which startups often fumble. They start creating their logo and their website and everything before they have any clear cut guidelines, and which usually leads to a lot of confusion later. Okay, so have brand identity guidelines. This is not just how you place your logo or what colors you are going to use. It is about understanding the tone of voice, the kind of language that you are going to use, what are the elements that you are going to play up, what kind of imagery you are going to use, what is the feeling that you want to bring out. Everything is underlined there. So have elaborate brand identity guidelines and then start designing your website, which is going to be your most important brand asset. In the age of digital communication, you cannot function without a website. So have a website where the audience can go and find out about you and they can interact with you. Social media handles accordingly, physical space design, and any other type of collaterals that you want to do. Okay. And invest in your foundation. Understand that this brand is going to be the very basis of your business. Okay. Startups often think that brand building is a waste, and we do understand that because we were once a bootstrap startup. So money was tight, And yes, at that time, when we think of creating very elaborate core essentials and everything, it might seem like a lot of time and a lot of money. But the long term results will be completely worth it. Okay. If you cannot have your brand core sorted out or your brand markers being outlined very neatly, then your communication strategy will suffer. Okay, and you will find it difficult to connect with your audiences or stay relevant. Remember that the age that we are in, everything is changing very, very fast. So if you want to stay relevant, you have to create that kind of timeless core. Otherwise, what will happen is that you will collapse the moment someone else comes in or the moment something new happens, or you'll be forgotten, which is not at all viable. You put in a lot of energy, time, money, everything into building something. You should make sure that it is ready to survive. Okay. So invest in it. If you do not, then your brand may not register with your audiences or they may not resonate with them. And what does not resonate or what stagnates will die out.
Yes.
So don't ignore branding. Please build it up and invest in it. Okay. Avinash, would you want to add anything to that?
No, Shakti, I think the brand is like your spirit of your creation. So for every startup, it's going to be very, very important. Don't just think that the outside appearance, like logo or everything else, is going to define the brand. It's not. It has to be the inherent, the core of the brand. It's about the kind of mindset the brand has got. That's what need to be defined, and that's why the brand story is going to be very important. And once you have set it up, invest in it, continue to build it up. It takes time, but it's something which will help you gain a lot of traction in the marketplace.
Yes.
Shukta, there is a
And
question from
also,
Arjun. He's saying that
yes,
what are some intangible aspects to consider in branding? I
like
think we
we
did
said,
talk about
the
it, but I will leave
intangible,
it to you. Continue, Shukti, continue.
yeah. Yeah, so the intangible aspects, like we said, the brand story, the mission or the vision that you have for your brand, see, they cannot be put in terms of, let's say, visuals. Okay. But you have to figure them out so that you can use them to strengthen your brand. If your brand does not have a long term vision, for example, okay, now let's say the vision of a brand is like what kind of change they want to create in a world. When Tesla, like pre Elon Musk Tesla, when they started, they said that we want to accelerate the world's transition into a fossil fuel free state. Okay, so that is something intangible and timeless. Okay, but the thing is, with that inspiration to guide them, they created something. Okay, remember this, that your brand's essence is the intangible aspect of your brand, and it has to be figured out.
Hmm.
And how it manifests? It will manifest in terms of your logo, your tagline, your brand assets. They will reflect your positioning, your philosophy, and everything. So the intangible aspect is pretty much like our personalities. Okay, it's your spirit, it's your values, it's your mental makeup, everything that you don't see or hear immediately, but you kind of figure out the more you interact with the person. That is a brand's intangible aspect. So,
Continue, Shukti.
yeah, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. And I hope that it was insightful for you. We definitely had a good time trying to go through all of this, and it was good to figure it all out because we work in branding, and it's been a passion and it's been incredibly rewarding interact with interacting with different startups, different entrepreneurs, and getting their their vision to life. And we hope that entrepreneurs or startups, they understand the importance of that, and they build up something which is timeless and which everybody can look up to.
So thank you everybody.
So
Thank you for
thank
joining.
you, everyone. Yeah. So thank you, everyone. And we will be here for the next live session on next Thursday. So thank you, everyone. And it was great having you all here. Okay. Thank you, everyone.